Hi everybody, my name is Bruce Burns, and among other things I'm a writer, and ever since I was a little boy, one of the biggest passions of my life has been sharing stories. So this will be the first video in a new series on my channel, and what I wanted to do is something a little different. I want to share a story with you, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting the first books of all my series up on my YouTube channel. I'm going to read them out loud as best I can, because in my opinion, what makes a really good story and what makes a story really matter is the ability to share things heart to heart, the ability to have an adventure together, to lose yourself, and when you come back, feel that you had a good journey. So I'm going to share stories with you, and I hope that you can follow along and enjoy them. I'm going to start with my oldest story, which I wrote a long time ago now, and it's called Darkblade. And so we will get this done in, let's find the newest, latest albums, second edition. Darkblade for Kindle. I do believe that this is the most modern version I've got. '11, 12. For Kindle, 2013. Yep, this is it. Open the file. See, no big production. This is just me sharing with you. So I hope you enjoy. Quick shout out to Nay Games at Twitter. Gave me, final kick in the butt to buy a better camera. I'm going to do this. So, Darkblade, copyright 2004 by Bruce Burns. First ebook 2011. First audiobook right now. So let's get started. Chapter 1. Macduvet, you are finished giving gracefully, and only your family will die. Otherwise, I will order the Resolute to scorch your planet from high orbit. I don't personally care. Still, you raised your little rebellion in the name of your people. It would be bad form to make them all pay for your foolishness. The man on the Resolute's main screen wore the brown and whites of the ancient OL orders. His face showed no concern. Captain Richards, if you are still alive at the end of the remaining half hour, I will be more than happy to surrender myself to a detachment of your Marines. Until that time, Tessor remains the hereditary property of the House Macduvet, and it has been for 200 years. You'll pardon me if I feel honor-bound to resist. Captain Richards snorted. What resistance can you offer? Your kind are a throwback to the primitive days before the old ruled the web. Your days of glory are over and done. You are outlawed, Macduvet. The Council has struck your coat of arms from the list. Your planetary shields are failing. Your pathetic navy could not even scorch my ship's hull. All of your surviving pilots are sitting in my brig. I have a full battery of 90 cannon, each one capable of leveling a city. Simply put, you are out of options. High Lord Macduvet folded his hands patiently in front of his chest. As you've been ever so fond of pointing out over the last 2 months of siege, you are here on very specific orders of the Council. Those orders include a precise timetable within which I have to surrender. If the Council is willing to erase a High Lord's family for defying them, what do you think they will do to an unblooded ship's captain who cannot follow a simple schedule? Captain Richards' fingers gripped the arm of his command chair so tightly that they turned white. He wanted to order his gunner to open fire with every fiber of his being, but the artifact of a nobleman was right. He had seen captains crucified for disobeying direct council orders. Macduvet's image offered an infuriating smile. You see, Captain Richards, even if you raise my planet to glass, you will never be anything more than the lapdog of the Council. If you kill me now, I will have my revenge. I will also have done something you have never known in your entire life. I will have been free. Captain Richards launched himself from the command chair, fists clenched. Your pretty speeches and imaginary sophistications aren't going to save you, MacDuvet. You have 25 minutes left, and then it's going to be over. But I can still hurt you, can't I? Your son was one of the fighter pilots we captured. I wonder how your people would react to watching him castrated. MacDuvet's smile vanished. This discussion is over, Richards. I cannot find it in myself to regret that I will not speak with you again. As simply as that, the view screen went blank. Richards hurled a sailor's curse at the blank screen and whirled in place. He struggled to keep his temper in check as his communications officer snapped to attention. "Com, give me the brig. I want Jean-Paul MacDuvet brought to the bridge at once. Then, get me a corpsman. No, make that a marine. I don't want the cuts to be quick or painless." The comm officer gave a quick acknowledgement and threw herself at her board. No one on the bridge crew wanted to attract his attention when he was this upset. Captain Richards paced away the weight. 21 minutes later, by the time 4 Marines arrived flanking the young man, possibly still in his teens, dressed in the brown and white of a MacDuvet flight suit. The name tag on the suit read MacDuvet, but Richards didn't need more than a second to realize that something was wrong. "This isn't the right man. The pilots must be switching uniforms on us. I'll have the security chief's spleen in a jar for this. Com, raise the brig. Tell them to get the right man up here." The comm officer responded even more quickly than she had before. Her fingers flew over her control board. Nothing happened. "Captain, I'm not getting any response from the brig." "Is there something wrong with the comm system?" There was enough of an edge to the captain's voice that the comm officer flinched. Maintaining the system was her responsibility. "No, sir. There's just no one answering in the brig." "That's impossible." "Oh, it's possible." Captain Richards' head snapped around. The captive pilot had spoken in calm, high-pitched voice. The Marines had already drawn their swords. No one was crazy enough to use a firearm on board a pressurized vessel. A single missed shot could kill everyone on board. The heavily armed Marines wielded white ceramic broadswords capable of slicing through steel. 4 of the blades were now bared and pointed at the captured pilot. "What did you say?" "There's no one there to answer your comm, Captain. There was an accident in the brig before your Marines arrived. They didn't even bother to check the identities of the officers who turned me over. It was very sloppy of them. Something like that could get a soldier hurt." The pilot delivered his entire response with the same complete calm as Lord MacDuvet himself had used. Richards found that he was getting very tired of that tone. Richards took a careful look at the icy cool pilot. The man was young, fit, and wolfishly lean. He was muscular and well-balanced, and there was a strange, reddish tint to his brown eyes that made Richards think of drying blood. A veteran of 15 years of armed conflicts, Richards found that matching this young man's gaze sent a chill down his spine. "I'm going to have to kill you, boy. It's nothing personal, but I'm rather busy and you're taking up valuable time. Before I have you castrated on worldwide broadcast, would you mind telling me what happened to the security officers?" The pilot looked down at the floor for a second, apparently preparing a response. Richards took a step back as the chill down his spine intensified. When the pilot looked back up, his eyes had changed. There were no whites left in them, no pupils either. From eyelid to eyelid, there was only a ruby-red glow. A presence suddenly radiated from the boy that had not been there before, and, for the first time in years, Captain Richards of the Old Navy felt his heart go cold with fear. "I happened to them," the pilot's voice reverberated with a new and grating power. If a rabid animal could speak, it might sound the same. Richards threw himself back and away from the boy. "Kill him!" he shouted to the Marines. To their credit, the Marines tried their best. They failed miserably. The thing in the pilot's uniform moved faster than anything Richards had ever seen. Blades were thrust at the man's heart where the man's heart had been, but he ducked the blows. Richards watched a knife hand strike thrust through a Marine's hard armor, flesh and bone. The pilot's... Oops, lost my page. The pilot spun the dying Marine over his head, allowing the body's hard armor to catch the next group of sword cuts. Before the bloody body hit the floor, another Marine flew straight up into the ceiling. His arm and armor were both bent with a new and unnatural joint. A glint of white flashed. The pilot had grabbed one of his victim's swords. Richards drew in a breath to shout a warning, but it was already too late. The pilot stepped forward with superhuman speed, a perfect horizontal cut dividing one of the Marines at the waistline. The remaining guard raised his sword overhead for a mighty downward blow, but he never made it. The tip of the pilot's blade appeared out of the back of his head, and the final weapon fell from lifeless fingers. The bridge officers were the cream of the crop in the Old Navy. They threw themselves at the attacker. They didn't stand a chance. The first few officers fell to the pilot's sword even as they turned to fight. Half of the 20 bridge personnel were dead within 10 seconds. The 10 seconds was all the time it took for the platoon of Marines to arrive. As an emergency precaution, all ships had a full platoon on duty in waiting rooms. These Marines were trained to stop boarding actions, put down mutinies, and, if necessary, punish independent-minded captains in a bloody and sort of permanent way. The 3 doors of the waiting room swung open on explosive charges. The Marines hurled themselves into the room with swords drawn. Electrochemical stimulants built into their armor made them unnaturally strong and fearless. The 3 columns closed in on the pilot, each from different directions. The pilot snapped the ship's navigator's neck like a twig at the same moment that he drew the bridge officer's sword and threw it. Richard saw the narrow white blade bury itself up to the hilt in the leading Marine's breastplate. The force of the blow picked up the body and then pinned the Marine to the bulkhead behind him. The pilot laughed as the Marines hurled themselves forward. An instant later, he disappeared in a pile of brown body armor. Richards couldn't make out the furious storm of blows, parries, and dodges that filled the center of the bridge. He didn't really need to. Marine after Marine flew through the air away from the maelstrom of men and metal. Most of them were dead before they rolled to a stop. The pilot's blows shattered armor and broke bones. White blades sliced nothing but air as he danced along them like shadows in a strobe lighting. As it was over as quickly as it had begun. The storm of blows was over. The pilot stood, bloodied with half a dozen superficial cuts, and 30 old Marines laid dead around him. The surviving bridge crew bolted for the bridge lift doors. None of them made it. Part of Richard's mind, not gibbering in fear, noticed that the planet of Tessor had 19 minutes left to surrender. Every single bridge monitor had survived. The ship itself had suffered no real damage, and it didn't matter. He watched the blazing fires of the pilot's eyes coming closer. The pilot had a death's head grin stretching from ear to ear. He was barely breathing hard. A last flicker of will kept Richards moving. The captain's hand blurred to the pistol at his belt. He would risk depressurizing the entire ship to kill this thing. Richards heard a strange snapping sound before his fingers could squeeze the trigger. He looked down in amazement to see that his forearm and hand had been crushed by the pilot's open-handed slap. His pistol had embedded itself in the timer monitor. The pilot lifted Richards by the throat in a one-handed grip. Those burning eyes were looking right at him. Richards had to be imagining it, but he could almost feel himself floating in those eyes. It almost felt good, peaceful, and filthy, right down to his bones. The thing in the pilot's uniform had just slaughtered 54 armed warriors. It wasn't breathing very hard. The thing rolled its head and laughed. "You cannot believe how good this feels, Captain, but everything has a price, you know. I can do things you've never imagined, but even I need to feed." Richards lost all control of his body as the red fire grew in his vision and in his mind. They seemed to fill the room, and then the universe. He felt his will to fight fade completely in the face of the filthy peace invading his very soul. Then, deep inside his mind and identity, something started to tear. The body that had once contained Captain Julian Richards of the Old Navy screamed as its murderer began to feed. Deacon Ryder leaned back in his chair and let a slow whistle escape his lips. He spoke just loud enough to be heard over the bad music blaring over the bar's speakers. You want to book passage from Reach to Tessor? Look, don't take this the wrong way, but what the stark are you thinking? Have you been living in a hole for the past 3 years? Deacon shivered. His hand twitched beneath the table, close to the pistol on his right hip. The man across from him smiled in a way that made the gray tattoos on his face dance slightly. The tattoos were barely visible beneath the man's cloak, but they made Deacon nervous. He had never seen anything like them outside of a history file, and he had seen a lot. There was something unsettling about the stranger. There was a sense of peace about him that had nothing to do with being in one of the most dangerous bars in Reach's orbit. Let's just say I've been out of touch. What seems to be the problem? Oh, there's no problem. It's just that half the Fandor circuit is an open rebellion against the Council. Every ship traveling the first circuit into or out of Fandor is stopped and searched by the old warships. You aren't exactly inconspicuous, you know, walking around like the Darkblade himself. You picked the wrong tattoo parlor. You'd be stopped and seized at Erin before we could even make the circuit jump. The tattooed man was silent for a moment. The word on station is that your ship... What was it called again? Ryder had to speak up slightly as sounds of a drunken arguing began by the bar. It's called the Revenant. The Revenant, then, is supposed to be a fast ship with an elite crew that no one wants to cross. Fast and tough are fine and good, stranger. There aren't enough warships in all of old space to keep the pirates down, and not everyone uses the web gates, if you know what I mean. When you've got to ship something someplace lost, there aren't going to be any old warships around to help you out. Have you been to many lost stars, Captain Ryder? A few. Times have been hard lately. What, with that rebellion in Fandor and all? There's that. It's got the entire old military on edge. Fandor has always been one of the stable old guard strongholds. Everyone looks for a rebellion once in a while from the Tellus sector or one of the worlds by the Scar. This was unexpected, and against all odds, the rebels seem to be winning. The siege of Tessor failed a month ago, and there have been at least 3 more capital ships lost since then. The Resolute and the Adamant were heavy cruisers, and then there's the Alexander, the flagship of the Fandor sector. Now, in addition to those losses, there are rumors of old Grassfire rebellions popping back up. The arguing at the bar died down. Grunts and wet smacking sounds of fist on flesh replaced the voices. The hooded man didn't spare the bar a glance. You mean that Tellus and the Scar are starting to rebel as well? Starting to look that way. With more than half a dozen web worlds in open rebellion, you can bet money that 10 times as many lost worlds are backing them. The Old are facing their first real challenge in 40 years, and the Council's cracking down on anything remotely suspicious. I'm telling you, friend, go and get those tattoos removed before somebody else who knows a little history sees you. An old loyalist is going to think you're trying to start Darkblade's rebellion back up again. Is that what they call it these days? Darkblade's rebellion. Both of the men leaned slightly back as a large, greasy person flew over their small table. He was not particularly well suited to flight. The flying man struck a table that splintered, proving himself equally ill-suited to landing. Ryder leaned back forward and gave the man another measuring stare. You really have been living on an asteroid somewhere, haven't you? The tattooed man shrugged lightly. I don't know what you mean. A second man hurled himself across their table. This one seemed to be in better control of his trajectory. He landed on the first man with his fists flying. Within seconds, the 2 of them were rolling around on the floor. The other bar patrons calmly stepped around them and went on with their business. Ryder had to speak a little louder still. You're telling me it's pure coincidence that you happen to look like a perfect holograph of the man who single-handedly brought the Old to their knees 40 years ago? You don't even know about him? I'm not saying that at all, Captain Ryder. It's just interesting to hear what other people think about you. I told you, I've been out of touch. This was too much. He pressed his personal voucher card over the table sensor to pay for their drinks. Then he stood up and started pulling on his coat. You're nuts, mister. If you're trying to impersonate the Darkblade, then there aren't enough credits in Talon to make me trust you on my ship. It was a pleasure. Try not to get yourself killed before I get out of the bar. I just had my clothes cleaned, and blood is very expensive to get out. I've got enough trouble without lunatics tagging along." The tattooed man, who thought he was the Darkblade, pulled a small pouch from the belt on his kimono. He opened it and shook it slightly. A small black object, the size of a marble, fell onto the table's surface. Captain Deacon Ryder fell back into his seat, staring. "As you can see," the tattooed man said, "I wasn't interested in paying with credits." Ryder reached out to the black object and froze. Looking back up at the stranger nodded. "Go ahead and look. It's real, I assure you." This is... The tattooed man leaned forward as a bottle flew through the air where his head had been. "I think the word you're looking for is avantium. No one has been able to construct avantium for 70 years. Not since..." The normally quick-witted captain seemed to be struggling to form sentences. He noticed his hand was sweating. "Avantium hasn't been seen in any quantity since the black ships left." "That's correct," the tattooed man grinned. "Turn it over, Captain." Ryder did as he was told, and he nearly dropped the avantium. There were dull gold glyphs covering the bottom side of it. The tattooed stranger reached out and touched the avantium with a single finger. The glyphs began to glow with a solid golden light. The tattooed man removed his finger, and the light dimmed. Ryder swallowed repeatedly before he regained his powers of speech. "This has been patterned. It's not just a piece of hull armor from a landing pod or something." Ryder stopped himself. He looked around to make sure no one else was listening, then he leaned forward and hissed, "Do you have any idea what this is worth?" "No, and neither do you. You could turn me in and hand that over to the Council of Old in exchange for the governorship of a web star system." "Why wouldn't I do that?" "Because, Deacon Ryder, you would have to present it to the Council of Old, even if they didn't just kill you for it. And you wouldn't be able to hide your true identity, and the Council does not repeal its judgments. If you turn me in, you will spend the rest of your life on Warden. Your ship is actually the rebel frigate Phoenix, and you would be dismantled in deep space with its crew still aboard. I can give you more reasons if you really want them, but those should do for now, I think." Ryder really did drop the avantium. "Who the Stark are you?" "Doesn't matter what I know. Believe the avantium. One way or another, you have to leave soon before anyone grows suspicious of how little cargo you're carrying. The only question left is this. Do we have a deal?" One of the wrestling drunks had produced a knife. Blood splattered suddenly across Ryder's left lapel. "Stark," Ryder swore under his breath. His right hand blurred to his holster and back up. Compressed air released a pair of "what" sounds. 2 claw-shaped darts embedded themselves in the fighting figures. Blue lightning sparkled over each of the drunks for an instant, before they both fell to the floor, slightly singed and infinitely more peaceful. They would be out for hours. Ryder holstered his weapon with an easy flourish. He was already walking towards the door of the bar. He casually fingered a decorative pin on his right collar. "Ryder to Revenant. Recall all crew members immediately. We've got trouble and we need to be gate-bound inside the hour. Oh, and I found a cargo. You aren't going to believe the cargo I've found." Ryder paused just inside the front door. "Are you coming, stranger? Or did you decide you didn't want a ship after all?"